Why did you release it to journalists yesterday, presumably on an embargoed and no third comment basis, rather than just provide it to the Senate as the government was directed to do?
It was available online today from 7 o'clock this morning, we gave, I think, a couple of journalists who'd been following the story access to that.
But I saw
it's
the
also
stories.
being provided to the Senate at the same time.
Yes, but it was provided to journalists before it was provided to the Senate, because Ron Meisen at the AFR and Tom McElroy at The Guardian, no disrespect to them, good luck to them, they get a story.
They had been following the story. I don't think it's unusual.
Well, their stories went up.
You provide things to journalists before you do things, like it's...
I'm not subject to orders of the Senate, and I'm not a minister in a government.
I've fulfilled the order
you
to
are.
the Senate.
But why did you provide it on an embargoed, no third-party comment basis to journalists before you provided it to the Senate, given the Senate had ordered the production of this document multiple times?
Essentially at the same time.
No, it wasn't, because they were able to upload their articles fully written at 7 a.m. this morning. In order for them to do that, they would have had... Sorry, Minister, I haven't finished asking my question.
Well, I've complied with the order of the Senate.
I haven't finished asking my question. In order for them to upload those articles on time this morning, they would have had to have the report yesterday. Senators did not have the report yesterday. We've only now had the benefit of it this morning, knowing the APSC is appearing now. Would have been helpful to us to have it yesterday too, as journalists did, so we could prepare for our questions.
Well, I have no doubt you'll have plenty of questions. You were provided with an in-person briefing ahead of its release, which wasn't provided to journalists.
Yes,
and I've fulfilled the order of the Senate, Senator Paterson.
I think it speaks volumes about the government's approach to transparency and scrutiny, which is something you promised to do better than the previous government. You made much of that in the last couple of elections.
Well, we are doing a lot better than your government.
Well, I think it's pretty cynical to try and manage the release of this report by dropping it to selective journalists and restricting whether they can seek third-party comment and giving them strict embargoes, rather than just complying with the orders of the Senate.
I've complied with the order of the Senate.
Well, actually, no, you didn't, because the Senate directed you to provide this report many weeks ago, and it wasn't provided as directed by the Senate.
I've complied with the order of the Senate, Senator Paterson. I accept that you disagree with the way that was handled, but I've complied with the order of the Senate. Okay.
Well, why did the government sit on this report for 2.5 years?
For all the reasons that I've provided the Senate with, and my answer to that won't change.
Well, what are those reasons?
Because we were finalising the appointments framework, which has now been done, and this review was informing that.
Why did it take so long?
Because the work wasn't completed. You know?
What took so long for the work to be completed?
Well, there was a number of discussions across government, a number of discussions that I had across portfolios. It took longer than expected, but it has been finalised now.
There are lots of complex public policy issues that governments deal with. This is an important one, but not one of the most complex. It's about board appointments. It's pretty straightforward. The recommendation's pretty clear, as we've now seen. Is it because your ministerial colleagues didn't agree with the recommendations in the report?
Well, you can see the government's response to that through the appointments framework.
Yeah, I can, but I'm interested in your answer, not just the government's response.
Well, you can see there are a number of recommendations we didn't accept, but there were a number that we did.
Okay. Just confirm again for me the date that the APSC received the report from Briggs.
I think it was in August 2023, from memory. I'm not sure of the specific date.
Yes, Senator, if I could add, it's Rachel Bacon, Deputy Commissioner, Australian Public Service Commission. The report was received in August 2023. So
more than 2 years ago. When did the APSC begin its work in responding to the report?
If you thought Canberra couldn't get any spisher, somehow Senator Gallagher said hold my flat white and proved everyone wrong. Because the moment she dropped that long-awaited Briggs report, not to the Senate, not to the people supposedly responsible for scrutinising it, but straight to a couple of journos on embargo, mate, the political theatre went from slow burn to absolute inferno. And the timing, the delivery, the smug little dance that comes with an embargo drop. It's all peak Canberra energy. A bit dodgy, a bit cheeky, and absolutely guaranteed to set everyone off like a packet of cheap bangers on New Year's Eve. Before we dive into Gallagher's little media drop stunt, hit that like button like you're swatting away another Canberra cover-up. Subscribe if you're over the transparency talk that never matches the actions. And yeah, the not far right, just right shirt stays exactly the same. Now, imagine you're sitting in the Senate estimates room. It's already tense. Everyone's tired, over-caffeinated, and sick of hearing the word process. Enter Senator Paterson, who sounds like he's been waiting months for this moment, practically licking his chops. He jumps straight in, no warm-up lap, no polite small talk, just, "Minister, why did you give the report to journalists before giving it to the Senate?" And honestly, fair question. The Senate had ordered this thing multiple times, like a parent telling their kid to clean their room, only to find the kids just shoved everything under the bed and then bragged about it to the neighbors. Gallagher, cool as a cucumber that's been left out on the bench but is trying to pretend it's still crisp, replies with this breezy, "Oh yeah, well, it was online this morning at 7 am and we gave a couple journos access, cause they've been following the story." Like it's a casual little courtesy, nothing to see here. As if the Senate doesn't care about being played like that. As if journalists getting first dibs isn't the political equivalent of telling your partner, yeah, I know we planned to watch it together, but the finale dropped and I watched it by myself last night. You're fine though, right? Paterson absolutely does not accept that. And honestly, you can see his point. Those journos, Ron from the AFR and Tom from The Guardian, didn't just magically whip up full articles at 7 am. This wasn't some rapid-fire morning wizardry. This was clearly prepped the day before, meaning they had the report early. Meanwhile, senators walk into the room basically blindfolded, handed the report like a birthday card from a cousin you don't like moments before being asked to read it aloud. Gallagher keeps insisting she complied with the order of the Senate, repeating it like she's convinced that if she just says it enough times, it becomes true, like chanting affirmations in the mirror. It's a very "I cleaned my room" moment, while the doona clearly hides a mountain of laundry. The back and forth doesn't cool down. Paterson presses harder, calling it cynical, the whole selective drop to friendly journos, strict embargoes, no third-party comment vibe is. Well yeah, it's classic government damage control. Textbook stuff, but coming from a government that rode in on the horse of transparency, integrity, sunlight fixes everything, it does sting a bit. Gallagher just shrugs it off with the confidence of someone who knows she's not actually going to get in trouble for any of this. Canberra's funny like that. They'll tear strips off each other for hours, but accountability? That's a tomorrow problem. Then comes the juicy bit. Why did the government sit on this report for 2.5 years? 2.5 years. That's longer than some appliances last. That's longer than most gym memberships. That's longer than half the promises politicians make survive in the wild. Gallagher pulls out the explanation. They were finalizing the appointments framework, and the Briggs review was feeding into that. You can almost hear the collective senatorial eye roll. Finalizing the framework is Canberra speak for "we'll get around to it when we get around to it." And 2+ years is a long time for a report to sit on the shelf gathering dust while everyone pretends they're still looking at it. And honestly, the Briggs report wasn't exactly a bombshell in terms of complexity. It's not like she was drafting a new constitution or solving world poverty. It's about board appointments, who gets what gig, when, and why. The recommendations were pretty straightforward. Stop being opaque, build some structure, quit picking your mates behind closed doors. Shocking, truly. When Paterson suggests maybe the delay was because some ministers didn't like the recommendations, Gallagher does this half shrug, half non-answer, pointing back to the government's response. Translation: we didn't take everything on board, obviously, but hey, we nodded at some of it. Then the timeline gets even messier. The APSC received the report in August 2023. That means the government had the thing for more than 2 years before anything resembling a public response. When Paterson tries to pin down when the APSC actually began to work, Gallagher gives fuzzy answers that feel like someone desperately trying to remember whether they left the oven on. She insists they started analyzing it immediately. But analyzing is vague enough to mean anything. You can analyze something by reading the first 2 paragraphs and thinking about them in the shower. And when he asks when the APSC first provided her with written advice, nobody can remember. The Deputy Commissioner pipes up to say they usually don't talk about details of cabinet preparation, which is Canberra code for "please stop asking awkward questions." So we've got a report that sat around longer than a forgotten Uber Eats voucher, released to journos before the Senate, wrapped in embargoes and restrictions, and framed by a government still trying to pitch itself as more transparent than the last mob. And behind all the procedural back and forth, you can feel the frustration fizzing under the surface. The senators want answers, real ones, not the "I've complied with the order of the Senate" line Gallagher repeats like a broken Siri. Meanwhile, Gallagher wants the whole thing over with. She's doing the political equivalent of tapping her watch and pretending she's late for another meeting. Paterson knows he's got her cornered on the timeline, and Gallagher knows the record is messy enough that nobody wants to dig too deep. Both sides are playing the game, and the rest of us are just popcorn in hand watching Canberra at its most Canberra. But here's the kicker. The Briggs report itself, one that supposedly drove all this secrecy and slow-motion government choreography, wasn't even about a scandal of the century. It was about cleaning up the appointment system, making it transparent, preventing the jobs for mates vibe that's been haunting governments for decades, and the very way it was handled. Well, let's say it doesn't exactly scream clean hands, open windows. The whole episode feels like watching a footy team insist they've totally improved their defense structure while letting the other team run straight through them. What makes it even more entertaining is how often we hear this line, "I've complied with the order of the Senate." Gallagher says it like she's ticking off a chore on a list. Dishes done, bins out, Senate satisfied. Meanwhile, Paterson repeats the obvious. The Senate ordered the report weeks ago. Weeks. And it only showed up this morning. Coincidentally, the same morning journos could hit publish on their fully polished takes. Canberra coincidence? Or Canberra choreography? You decide. But the moment that really sums up the dynamic is when Gallagher says senators did get something earlier than journalists. An in-person briefing. As if that fixes the entire ordering mess. As if a briefing replaces access to the actual document. It's like saying, "Sure, mate, the journos got the steak, but we gave you a nice whiff while it was cooking. Cheers for that." By the end of the exchange, Gallagher is visibly done with the whole conversation. Paterson is out of time, but definitely not out of questions. And the chair steps in like a teacher breaking up kids arguing over who stole the good crayons. And just like that, they move on, because estimates waits for no one. But the moment sticks. Not because anything exploded or because someone dropped a life-changing revelation, but because it's such a clean little microcosm of Canberra politics. Secrecy called transparency, process called compliance, delays called consideration, and a government that promised sunlight, throwing a report into the shadows for 2.5 years only to flick it to the media before letting the Senate touch it. The Briggs report might be about appointments, but the whole situation feels like it's really about priorities. And if this moment shows anything, it's that managing the media still sits very comfortably above respecting the Senate's orders, no matter who's in government. By the time the chair cuts things off and promises to circle back later, you get the sense that nothing has been resolved but everything has been revealed. The frustration, the defensiveness, the carefully managed releases, the dodgy timing, all laid out in front of the cameras. And that moment, more than anything in the report itself, shows exactly why people are so fed up with the way politics is run. Not because the issues are too complex, but because the games are too predictable. And Gallagher dropping the Briggs report to journalists ahead of the Senate? That's not just predictable, that's classic. It's Canberra in its purest form, mate. And honestly, you couldn't script it better. Smash that like button if you reckon Australia deserves better judgment at the top. Hit subscribe to keep the pressure on Canberra, and grab the Not Far Right Just Right shirt. Links in the description.